Hello everyone, my name is Gervais. I'm a homeschool mom of 6 and I'm a former educator. I really can't say formal because technically I still teach, but I worked in the field of education for over a decade and I have the privilege of homeschooling my own children. So if you're new to my channel, thank you for joining us. I would love for you to hit the like button, subscribe, stay connected, find out when I'm going to have a new video. My goal for today's video is to not only share a review of the curriculum through my lens as a former classroom teacher, but I also want to share what worked for us, what systems and processes we put in place to make things run smoothly. I had 2 6th graders this past homeschool year and I had a 5th grader. So I'm reviewing what my 2 6th graders did this past homeschool year. And I want to start off with the first subject. So what we would do is we would start off with the first subject of Bible. We had a homeschool hub and this hub allowed me to log in. I could see every single course that my children were going to be taking. So the moment that I purchased my full kit for the 6th grade level, which is all of the things you see here, I was able to then log into the platform while I was waiting for the books to come in the mail. And I was able to start assigning these specific courses to my 6th graders. So we would start off with Bible every single day. The Homeschool Hub allows you to actually assign an order to how your kids will take their classes. So I love that that hub gives that creative power. So I could say I want to do Bible, followed by math, followed by perspectives in literature, followed by English. So for me, I just enjoyed having my kids do the core subjects in the morning before lunch. And then after lunch, it was any other courses that were not core subjects. So that's just what my setup was like. It worked for me and my family. And so I thought I would share that. Another thing that I did for not only my 6th graders, but for all of my kids this second year of using BJU Press is I decided to use a spiraling system. So I would create a spiral for every single course and I would organize these spirals by quarters. I would take, so when you get the curriculum, you'll get a workbook, a consumable workbook for the 6th grade Bible truths. And then you'll also get video access to the lessons. So I noticed that when I would log into the Homeschool Hub, there's all the memory verse quizzes, there's the quizzes in general to cover the topics that are being covered during that particular chapter. And then there's also Bible tests. I had my kids do all of it. So the way that I kept us organized is I would open up the workbook itself and I would actually tear out pages and I would organize it based off of quarters. So let's just say the first quarter was August to the beginning of October. I would look at, okay, what day are we starting with? We're starting with day 1, right? And then from there, I would go all the way until I would use the Homeschool Hub to kind of pan through each day until I got to the end of our quarter. So I would always establish quarters using dates. So when I would get to, let's say, October 10th, inside of Homeschool Hub, it would tell me what day it was. And that's how I knew what to tear out of the workbook, because you'll find in the bottom corner, there is a lesson number for every single page inside of every single workbook. So I made it a point to go through and pull out the actual pages that correlated with that particular quarter. So just a little tidbit, it made things easier because I put it into a spiral, those particular workbook pages, and I also sandwiched in between the workbook pages actual tests and quizzes. And I did this in chronological day order, because BJU Press Homeschool, they organize their curriculum by days. So day 1, day 2, day 3, and so on. So I would organize it that way. So when my child would open up their spiral for Bible, they would be going in chronological order and they would know, okay, it's day 91. You have to take test number whatever. But that test would be right here, because for me, this was easier than logging in and printing out a resource that I needed and then handing it to my kid. Multiply that by 3 kids multiple times a day, it can make your head pop off. So what I decided to do was take time to organize each quarter, and I would sandwich in between all the daily lessons. Anytime there was a quiz, anytime there was a special activity, like here's an example of a special activity that they had to do. This one was about the benefits of abandoning sin, and this was day 106. So if you look in the top corner, it says day 106 right there. So this would be more of like a supplemental worksheet. And I forgot to mention, BJU Press allows you to order lots of those added worksheets. You can order them up front and don't have to worry about actually printing them throughout the school year, which I found to be so helpful. I did that each year that I used BJU Press. So I was able to take time to organize the workbook pages. And if it said, okay, on day 106, they're going to do the benefits of abandoning sin, I would add that page, and then I would continue to add day 107, day 108, but I would use the Homeschool Hub and it would tell me, okay, they're going to complete these workbook pages, and then they're going to take this quiz, and then they're going to do this workbook page. So it allowed me to kind of go through. And then also with the Bible, there's times where the student's going to have to recite, a particular memory verse. So I found that it was helpful for me to already go and take a glance at this in advance. And anywhere that if they have to recite something as part of their curriculum requirements, I would write it on a sticky note. And I would stick that sticky note right on that page, and I would keep organizing. So when I was done, I would have a fully fleshed out spiral for that quarter, and everything that my kids would need for that subject was in order. The only time I ran into a challenge was whenever I ran out of pages for that quarter. Then obviously I had to prepare a new spiral, but then that would last us several weeks. And so that's my system. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so let's talk about Math 6. Math 6 was a big jump from Math 5. The reason why I say that is because Math 6 did not come with a consumable workbook. It comes with a textbook. So what I did for this year is I made sure that my kids did not write in this book, but we use it as a resource. So you'll find that with the different lessons, it's beautiful, full color, super organized by topics. Every single topic in here started off with, or every single unit started off with a really unique opener. Like, for example, Unit 10 is talking about equations here. So they're going to be making real world connections to that topic for math. And then they're going to be diving into their lessons. And you'll find that there will be like a mini lesson overview followed by some practice. And so I found that there was a specific rhythm and cadence for math. And this kind of got my wheels spinning because I really still wanted to use our spiraling system. I got a tip and pointer from another homeschool mom who was using BJU Press and had already did grade level 6 for her child. And she recommended, hey, just get a notebook, because the structure is that there's going to be a daily math review that the kids are going to have to do. And the daily math review is organized based off of a letter number combination. So to give you an example, in the back of the Math 6 textbook, you're going to see a whole list of all the daily review, and it's organized by chapter. So every chapter has a daily math review for each lesson of that particular chapter. And so I'm going to give you an example here. So this is what 1E looks like. So we're chapter 1, and then letter E is the convention for this one. So you'll see that those are some practice problems. And so my kids had the option of either writing directly in this textbook, which is not a consumable workbook, or writing in a spiral notebook. But for me, I wanted a system that would be more structured to make it easy for me to check their work, because they would have a daily math review pretty much every single lesson. And then they would also have a student edition assignment that their math teacher would assign from video lessons. So I decided, I looked ahead, I looked at what the average number of questions were every single day that they had a math review, and then the average number of questions for the student review. And I created a little handout. Send me a message. I'm happy to share this with you for free. But I created this handout for the daily math review where my kids could write in the date. They could write in the review number, like 1E. And then instead of having to take the time on their spiral to number their paper and then write out and try to solve all the problems, I just created boxes. And in those boxes, they're already numbered, as you can see. So my kids would just start working. Again, I'm always trying to look for ways to save time, and this was a great time saver. So I made a double-sided boxed out daily math review, and then I also made a student edition review because I noticed that the lessons have a daily review and then a student review where they have to do, it might be, for example, questions 1 through 4 and number 7, even numbers or odd numbers. So for me, I try to think ahead at the beginning of the school year, what would be the best way for me to help my kids be as successful as possible. For some people, this is an extra step. You don't want to print off extra stuff and you're like, line paper, just get a spiral and it should work. But for me, I wanted a contained box where my child could work through the problems and I could look for that particular answer. And I was trying to encourage my 6th graders, show your work, circle your answer. So that way, as I'm checking, it's easier for me to see whether or not they got it. And I could easily re-guide them back to redoing that particular one. So for me, one thing that I wish is that there was some type of system for the 6th grade level to kind of create a different kind of bridge between using that consumable workbook in 5th grade and then bumping up to 6th grade where you're pretty much just using a textbook and you're having to learn. And some people might argue, well, that's part of that transition to middle school. Agreed. But for me, I felt like it'd be really cool to maybe have some type of tool or something where the kids could actually organize how they keep track of their student edition assignments or their daily reviews. But other than that, absolutely loved the setup. And I love the fact that with having online videos, my kids can watch and rewatch, pause, rewind. They have the ability to keep playing those videos, especially if they're having any challenges, we can kind of go back and revisit. And that to me is the beauty of having that video teacher and having that support. Now let's talk about perspectives in literature. So for perspectives in literature, you have a consumable workbook, you have a textbook, and then there's novels. I actually have to grab the novels. One second. I'm going to grab those novels so I can show them to you. But what I like about this is there is that consumable workbook. The perspectives in literature 6th grade textbook is amazing. There are a wide variety of different types of genres, different types of texts throughout this entire book. What I really like is that there's intentionality in the art that's presented and the different types of stories that are presented. There would be before reading activities in here for them, all of which they would work through with their teacher. Now, some of you might be saying, well, hey, I'm a homeschool mom who did not purchase the Homeschool Hub access. We're not doing the online version. I'm teaching myself. What I love is that there are some really cool features in here, and you would just have a physical copy of the teacher's guides. For people that purchase the online tools, you have a digital copy. You're able to log in and get the teacher's edition in the digital format. But you'll notice that the structure of these lessons have before reading activities, questions to think about, vocabulary words. If there's a particular tool that's being used for that lesson, it's mentioned. And there's different things that are organized throughout every single portion of that particular passage that you may be reading for that particular lesson. And then there's an after reading activity. So even here, you'll notice that there's an after reading, and then there's some questions and other things, but just full color. This is not consumable, it's a resource, but I just love how structured and how predictable every single lesson is for perspectives in literature. There's points in the school year where the kids actually read a novel with their teacher. And then at the end of the school year, when all the lessons are taught, there's another opportunity to read a different novel. So there's reading that's laced all throughout it. One thing I will say is it's extremely content heavy. So I would highly recommend that you, the parent, take time to log in or look at the scope and sequence, because you also get a paper copy of the scope and sequence where you can see exactly what they're doing for each day, for every subject, for the entire year. Go through it, decide what they are going to do and which parts you're going to pull. So that way it doesn't feel overwhelming, because that's one of my wishes. One of my wishes is that although there's a lot of great resources and there's tons of it, I wish that there wasn't as much, because it's so much. If you decide to try to be an overachiever, that it would really cause a lot of overwhelm for a student to have to do all the optional practices that are there and all the daily work and then the tests and the quizzes and then the study guides, and it just becomes a lot. And so for me, I wanted to strike a balance between them learning and then also not experiencing academic fatigue. The next subject I'm going to review is 6th grade spelling. This is the last year that on the BJU course track that a student would actually take spelling. After that, it's word study, it's vocabulary when you get to 7th grade. So for spelling, there's a consumable workbook, and this workbook goes through every single unit, with which basically every week there's a new list of words. Let's see here. Let me just pull up, for example, list 27. And then they do all kinds of work with these words. So dictionary skills, proofreading, all kinds of things. So here's an example. This is list 27. And you'll notice that the list is provided. So whatever that pattern of words is, then there's review words that they can choose from. There's going to be a word study activity and other things that they can do to practice using those spelling words. And this is sprinkled throughout the week. What happens is these are giving the kids opportunities to work through and practice using those words throughout the entire week. The school week starts off with a pre-test. They're just testing to see the kids' knowledge of the new spelling words. And then by the middle of the week, which could be Wednesday, that's a practice test. So they're kind of taking the test to see how well they're going to do. And then they have the actual final test, typically on a Friday. And then it repeats that cycle. So for spelling, you would have to prepare to print off the spelling testing pages. So what I would do, let me just give you an example, is I would spiral in the pages that they have to work on. And here's an example of a pre-test. This is a pre-test. And then after the pre-test, they're doing some work with those words. So I just put the workbook pages for spelling right inside of this spiral. They're doing some more work. And now it's time for a practice test. We want to see how well they can do. So there's already a formatted testing page available. You just have to print it off. And then after the practice test, they're doing more workbook pages from spelling to continue practicing. And then they make it to their final test. So for me, it was really awesome to have this in a chronological order in a spiral, because the one subject that can be a pain point is spelling, because there's 3 different worksheets that they need for every single week. So my first year, I would just be printing this off. Sure, let me print that for you. Sure, I can print your pre-test. Sure, I'll print your practice test. And then eventually I got smart and I said, wait a minute. I think I could save myself a lot of time if I print this in advance. So I would give them like a folder full of these worksheets. And then I realized by year 2, let me spiral it. And when I tell you my kids' feedback, they loved the fact that I spiraled it to make it easier for everyone. It's easier for all. Now let's talk heritage studies. Heritage studies comes with a textbook and a consumable workbook. So the way that this is set up is there are going to be all kinds of like resources in here, study guides. What I like about this structure is that you do have your textbook, you have the video lesson that's going to lead the kids through daily lessons, but when it's time for them to be tested, they will take tests, they'll have quizzes, but they have built-in study guides that are built into the consumable workbook. So that way you don't have to figure out how to help them study. You could really have them complete that study guide. You can grade the study guide, check for understanding, and have them use that for studying purposes, which was very convenient. In 6th grade, they're learning about cultures. World cultures all over the world. So you'll find that if you take a peek at the chapters in the 6th grade table of contents, it's covering Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, ancient Israel, ancient India, ancient China, ancient Persia. So it's literally going through different ancient cultures around the world. And that's what literally every single chapter is. But it starts with like the beginning, and it talks about the beginning of time from a biblical standpoint. One thing I like about heritage studies is that you'll find throughout the textbook, they have lots of more like caricature kind of pictures, or more cartoony, but also a lot of real life photos. And I found that that is super helpful. So like here, when they're talking about an ancient collection from a museum, they're actually showing that museum artifact and things like that. So I feel like that balance between the cartoon type pictures and then real actual photos was really amazing throughout this entire textbook. You'll also find that there are activities inside of every chapter where they're encouraging the students to do projects. So for example, they have them, when they're learning about ancient Egypt, create hieroglyphics. And it tells you, hey, take out your activity manual and do this, try to spell this using hieroglyphics. So there's activities like that. And then sometimes there's actual projects. Like I know at one point my kids did a mosaic, and this was for heritage studies. So it's really neat how it's not just content, but there's intentional projects and activities weaved in. What you'll find is that there's a supply list that BJU Press provides parents for all subjects. And so that's great because it'll let you know exactly what you need and exactly when you need it, like week 1, day 2, day 3, and all of that. So that's really helpful. One thing I wish I would have done differently is taken the time to really prioritize organizing all of the resources that we needed for heritage studies, because I was more focused on science and all of that. But it made it harder because as we got to certain points, my kids are like, Mom, do we have this? Mom, do we have that? So if I would have really prioritized and used the list of supplies, it would have made it so much easier to be able to support my kids as they were navigating through the studies throughout the entire course. I have 2 more subjects. One is science. 6th grade science comes with a consumable workbook and a textbook, and similar setup and strategy and structure, to heritage studies. So you'll see that this looks so empty, and that's because I developed a spiral system that I've already talked to you about, where I would spiral everything together. So in the science 6th grade level, I just love that, number one, it has everything broken down into units. So if you take a close look at the table of contents, there's no guessing there. You'll notice that they're talking about our changing earth, God's living creation, energy and motion beyond earth, which is like solar system, God's continuing plan, which is all about like plant and animal reproduction, hereditary stuff and genetics, and then the nervous system and immune system, all kind of covered throughout the entire school year, but it's broken into units, which is amazing. There are lots and lots of super colorful pages, illustrations, just making it so much easy for the kids to really absorb the information. And again, this for us was led by a video teacher. And so she might say, okay, please turn to page 148. We're going to be talking about flowers today and that kind of thing, and learning about different classification of plants. So sometimes a video lesson teacher will do a mini lesson, and then he or she may read part of a page, and they may say, pause the video and read the next 2 pages by yourself. So there's times as I was watching my kids navigate through their lessons, I could see that their video was paused, and it was on the pause screen of their video lesson, and I saw them reading. And so it was just really cool seeing them interact. Science is really neat because there's experiments weaved throughout the entire course, and there's a huge supply list. So I was very intentional about getting all the supplies. Although we didn't do every single experiment, it was just great being able to navigate and as a parent decide, okay, this is one we're going to do and this is one we're not going to do. So you have a lot of creative power as the parent. So please remember that. Last but not least, let's talk about handwriting, because I did have my kids do that for 6th grade. For 6th grade, handwriting is actually calligraphy. This is the last year that kids that are doing a BJU Press track will actually take a handwriting course. And this particular course is calligraphy. So what's neat about this course is that there are pages throughout the entire workbook where they're going to do a video lesson with the teacher, and they get a calligraphy pen, which is very neat. And so they get to practice what they're learning. So they're getting content and information while they're still practicing handwriting, which is really neat. I found that my daughter was really into it and my son not so much, but there was opportunities for them to, write out a passage using their calligraphy pen. So you'll see that my daughter did that here. And that's just throughout the entire course, lots of practice. Like here, you'll see that she did some work with her calligraphy pen and was working on certain strokes and lettering. So that was just really neat. That is what the whole entire school year was all about, was practicing cursive, but really diving deeper into calligraphy. So weaving in cursive with calligraphy approaches, if you will, and learning tips along the way. Lots of tips on how to write using calligraphy, so which was amazing. My family and I absolutely love BJU Press. We were vested and we did it for 2 consecutive years. We are pivoting for this upcoming homeschool year, for our 2026-2027 homeschool year, for a number of reasons. I can't wait to share those with you. However, for those of you who are out there and you're like, this is going to be our first year with BJU Press, I know that you're going to enjoy it because it was amazing and it served our family well for the 2 years that we used it. If you've liked this video or if you found it helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button. Share this video with someone else that you think could benefit from it. And please, please, please stay tuned. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you thought about the video. And if you have any other questions about how we use the curriculum, what worked for us, what didn't work for us, I'm here to support you. Thank you for joining the journey. Until next time, bye for now.